without any further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Mohammed Jiva to speak for us. He graduated from Liverpool University in 1994, and having completed his GP training in Bury, he became a GP principal at Peterloo Medical Centre, Middleton, and has continued as a full-time GP since. Throughout this period, he has held various NHS jobs in management and currently holds the following positions. He is a CEO at Rochdale and Bury Local Medical Committee, Chair at Rochdale Health Alliance, CEO British Hajj Delegation, and is clinical lead for the Rochdale Borough Homeless Service. In 2014, Dr. Mohammed Jiva was also awarded an MBA in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for services to GP. So we're quite blessed to have him speak for us. So inshallah, Dr. Mohammed Jiva, if you'd like to start.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you for the invitation to speak at BIMA, and thank you for your audience who have got up on a Sunday morning. If I look a bit beshreveled, it's because Sunday morning usually is my gardening day, and I've just come in from the garden to do this seminar. So if I look a bit tired, it's because it's a bit hot out there. So I'll move on with the presentation. This is me, and it's already been introduced. Thank you for the introduction. In terms of the British Hajj Delegation, we're a medical team that go out, alhamdulillah, every year, and I've been doing this for over a decade now as part of originally the government task force. And originally, the Labour government used to fund and support 8-9 doctors to go out every year, and they would provide our transport, food, hotel cost, and with us there would be 2 or 3 Foreign Office officials who would deal with other matters that are non-medical. That carried on for a number of years, and alhamdulillah, the agenda then was to look after the British Hujjaj during the period of Hajj. When the austerity measures kicked in, a lot of the national projects were trimmed back, and one of those that was trimmed back was the British Hajj Delegation, and therefore the funding stopped. At that time, the doctors who were part of the delegation felt that there was wisdom and merit in carrying on providing free healthcare to the Hujjaj, and the chair at the time, our late Lord Adam Patel, who's passed away only recently, suggested that we should carry on as a charity, and subsequently, about 5 years ago, the British Hajj Delegation became a charity. Annually, the doctors still go out, and alhamdulillah, we're planning to fly out next Saturday for a period of 3 weeks, and the doctors pay for their own flight, accommodation, food, all the cost incurred during Hajj, and we have a pharmacist locally who provides all the medicines that we need annually for free, so that we can give the medicines to the Hujjaj for free as well. Many of the doctors take annual leave from work, and some get locums if they've got a small practice to backfill their job while they're out in Saudi Arabia. The only mandatory requirement we have to join the medical team, this is one of the common questions I get asked, is how can we join the team, is that you have to have done your own Farz Hajj first before you can come out with us. And the reason being that our primary aim for going out to Saudi Arabia is not to perform Hajj, but to look after the Hujjaj. And should we be going out and it is our Farz Hajj, it puts us in a difficult position. Whereas at the moment we are going out, and alhamdulillah, for all the years I've been going out, I've never had to abandon Hajj for the sake of healthcare. We've managed to integrate both. But should this happen, we wouldn't want a doctor to forfeit a Farz Hajj because of healthcare needs if there was a crisis. So you've got to have done your own Farz Hajj before you can come out with us. And as the situation is at the moment, you've got to be able to fund your own post to come out with us. But the blessings and the enjoyment that the doctors get in serving the Hujjaj is something that I can't compare to any of the other jobs I do. So there's a lot of blessing and merit in what we do. In terms of for the Hujjaj to prepare, one of the things I tend to suggest is that if you're on regular medication and you get a prescription, then you will usually get the white side of a prescription as shown here. In Saudi Arabia, there's plenty of pharmacists and they are very well stocked, but because they buy drugs from around the world, they may have the same drug but under a different name. And I always suggest that if you've got regular healthcare problems like heart problems, asthma, diabetes, epilepsy, any other problems for which you get regular medication, tear off the white side of the prescription, take a photocopy of it, put one in your suitcase and one in your hand luggage, and also take a picture on your phone if you've got one of these new smartphones, so you've got an electronic version. Always take more medication than you need, because you never know if you're going to lose some medication or some of it gets damaged in transit. And always remember that the transfer from UK to Saudi Arabia and getting to your hotel in Makkah and Medina could have its own inherent delays, and therefore you may not be able to get to your suitcase if there are transport delays. So always keep enough medication in your hand luggage for a period of 24 hours. Be aware that if you need anything like needles for diabetes, you may need a doctor's letter to justify why you're carrying sharp appliances. And in Saudi Arabia, various drugs that we take as common practice, like codeine, tramadol, pethidine, morphine, are all considered illegal for us to carry. And in Saudi Arabia, you need a prescription from a doctor to be able to purchase these items from a pharmacy. Unlike antibiotics, you can't just purchase them without a prescription. So if you are on any medication that is a controlled drug, speak to your GP, ask for a letter, and make sure the letter clarifies why you need to be on this medication. Also highlight this to your tour operator before you travel to ensure that there's no new surprises for your tour operator at the airport with regard to your medication. In terms of vaccinations, as you will be aware, ACWY is mandatory. The original acceptance by Saudi authorities was that the vaccine and its certificate was valid for 3 years, but recently they've now covered it for 5 years because there is meningitis vaccines that are licensed for 5-year coverage. Have them at least 6 weeks before travel, but I am aware that people have now started to leave for Hajj, and I suspect you'll all have had your mandatory vaccine, without which you will struggle to get past passport control in Saudi Arabia. Even if they've not checked your passports here, very often when you are waiting at the airport for passport control, you will see health officials from Saudi Arabia coming around checking your passports to make sure that you have a meningitis certificate in your passport. So do make sure that the certificate is in your passport, but it's also secure in your passport so it doesn't accidentally fall out. Other optional vaccines. At this time of the year, the flu vaccine is not available. Usually GPs and pharmacists will get vaccines around October. So unfortunately, you can't get the flu vaccine. But the one I do recommend often is tetanus. And if you've not had one in the last 10 years, I would suggest you have a word with your practice nurse. It is freely available from your GP. And because you spend a lot of time walking, there's always a chance that you could get a cut or a skin damage. And it's useful to have that cover if you have it. And other optional vaccines that you can ask your GP for are hepatitis A and B, although they may charge you for this vaccine. In terms of flying out, leave home early. And as I say, have at least 2 days, if not at least minimum 1 day of medication in your luggage. And as mentioned, make sure you get a letter if you need it. Do make sure that you've got the correct luggage allowance. Because there's nothing worse when you've got hundreds, if not thousands of people at the airport. You've waited an hour or more to get to the front of the queue, only to be told that your suitcase is too way overweight, and therefore you'll have to lighten it. You have to move out of the queue, and then your pressure, your blood pressure, your stress levels all start to increase, and you get off to a bad start. Also, be aware of what you are carrying in terms of food items and various other products that Saudi authorities may frown upon because you're bringing things into the country that you shouldn't be in terms of food. In terms of travel, going out to Saudi Arabia, do be aware that especially in the back of the plane, you will be stationary for a long periods of time, and there are always risks of blood clots in your legs, deep vein thrombosis. And to minimize the risk, make sure you drink water throughout the journey when you're flying, sip water, walk around the plane every half an hour to an hour just to get your leg muscles moving. There are other precautions you can take, like stockings if you're not in ihram, but main thing is carry on walking every half an hour to an hour and keep yourself well hydrated. Try and avoid things like coffee, tea and fizzy drinks while you're on the plane. One, because it'll make you pass more urine, but it also will make you slightly dehydrated. When you arrive at Saudi Arabia, stay with the group. Don't go wandering off, because once your group moves from one area to another, you'll struggle to find them, and the authorities won't let you just walk from one room to another without authorization. So stick with the group. If you need to go to the toilet, make sure somebody knows. And also, whilst waiting at the airport, if it's time to have your medication, have your medication. Drink regularly, sip water, don't gulp water. The temperature is going to be very high this year in Saudi Arabia. Look after the children and the elderly, because they will dehydrate a lot quicker, especially with children not being able to tell you that they are getting thirsty and dehydrated. And also have small regular meals to keep your energy levels up. Avoid heavy meals that make you stodgy and sleepy. So small regular meals, small drinks on a regular basis, take your medication on time, and also stick with the group. When you get an identity bracelet which shows which model in which group you are with, if you can, and if you have an existing long-term health problem, try and write it in felt tip on the inside of your bracelet, like I've shown here. If somebody's got diabetes, write diabetes, heart problems, asthma, COPD. And if you've got any allergies and you can fit them on, that would be great. Primary reason is that you never know when you fall ill. You may be walking from MINA to JAMARAT. Something may happen. Somebody may collapse. You may not have a list of your medication with you. If you have your illness written on the inside of the bracelet, it makes it easier for the medics to identify the primary reason you may have collapsed. And for example, if you're diabetic, they could check your sugar levels rather than start doing heart trace and other things to see if that could be the reason why you've collapsed. So write something on the inside. Remember, you will be sweaty and the inside of the bracelet will get wet. So try and use a pen that is not soluble, that is permanent. When you arrive in Makkah, take some rest. Don't try and get over the Umrah section as quickly as possible. There is nothing that says that you have to get off the coach, drop the bags off in your room and run straight to Haram to get your tawaf and say you're done. Your body has just undergone significant trauma in the journey you've undertaken from the UK to Saudi Arabia. Rest your body. Have a small meal. Have a nap if you need to lie down and rest. If you've arrived and it's almost midday, then try and stay out of the sun. Don't try and go and do your tawaf in the midday sun. Likelihood is you will get exhausted, dehydrated, and end up collapsing. So take your time, look at where in the day you are, find a cool part of the day, late afternoon if possible. When you get into Haram, don't all try and rush for the Madaf, which will be heavily crowded. Have a look at the other floors. Yes, the walking distance is longer, but you will have more space and you will be under the shade of the roof, which means you will stay cooler. There should be Zam Zam taps and bottles around the Haram. So take a break every so often, have a drink, rehydrate, and then carry on. Because by the time you finish your tawaf and sa'i and gone back to the hotel room, your body will be physically exhausted and you will need that rest. When doing tawaf, avoid heavy crowded areas, as I've mentioned. Now here in the diagram, you can see sisters with green hijab on. And very often you'll find that Hujjaj from the Far East, especially Indonesia, Malaysia, are very well organized. They have structured courses in their country, which Hujjaj have to attend. And to ensure that their Hujjaj do not get lost, they have the same colors of hijab. Over many years, when I finish my rituals, I very often will go on the top floor of Haram and look down at the mataf, and it is a pleasure to be able to see these people doing tawaf around the Kaaba with specific colors, green, blue, pink, red, and how they move like amoeba around the mataf as one group. As beautiful as it is to see these people walking and doing tawaf together, be aware that, as you may see in this picture, the brothers stand on the outside of the sisters as a barrier, and that group moves as one unit. If you are in the way, don't think that they will change their direction to accommodate you. The likelihood is you're going to get pushed out of the way and you may get hurt. So if you see a group coming behind, and usually you will hear them before you see them, move out of the way, let them go past, and then carry on your tawaf in a safe manner. As I say, this year temperatures could go up to 40 to 55 degrees at various parts of the day and on various parts of your journey. So drink regularly. Carry a small bottle with water and sip through the day. The average male adult should be getting through 3 to 4 liters a day, but be guided by how your body feels. If your tongue feels dry, if your urine is smelly and dark, if you're feeling tired, weak, dizzy, chances are you're getting dehydrated. So drink small and often. When you're going to Jamarat, you'll see water taps like the one shown. Stop every so often and take a drink of water. Wet your face, wet the back of your neck, wet your hair. Try and cool the body down. Try and avoid fizzy drinks, tea, coffee, which will make you dehydrated. And as I've mentioned, have a nice little bottle, say a 500 ml bottle, and keep it with you at all times, because there may be parts of the journey where taps are not easily available and you need to rely on your own supply of water. Zam Zam water is freely available, especially in Makkah, Medina. In MINA, it may not be as easily available, but you will get plenty of fluid. These are things that most of you will know. Very rehydrating, very nutritious, easily accessible. Try and opt for the room temperature Zam Zam over the cold one, even though the cold is a lot more satisfying, as you may end up developing a sore throat if you drink a lot of cold water. And as mentioned, try avoiding gulping sip waters on a regular basis. Don't make the mistake of assuming that because you're drinking Zam Zam water, you don't have to use your own medication. Take your medication on a regular basis. In MINA, you will notice in the corner of your tent brown bins like this one, and you should ensure that there's regular drinks in there. There'll be big ice cubes in there to keep the drinks cold. There'll be fizzy drinks as well as water. As mentioned, try and stick to the water if you can, but for those that are adamant they need a sugar boost, there will be fizzy drinks in there. We do have a clinic in MINA. Very often, year on year that I've been going, as I say, over a decade now, we've been based in front of Saudi clinic number 10. So this is where our clinic is. We are in front. If you go down the road, you will have a fire station on the far right hand side. You will have the Saudi health clinic on the right hand side, and on the left you will see our clinic, which usually has a banner with British Hajj Delegation written on it. We tend to work from after Fajr in the mornings, roughly about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we try and run the clinics till 9 o'clock in the evening to ensure that Hujjaj can get to us. During Mina, it does get very busy. Very often we can have queues going down the passageways onto the road, even though there is a Saudi clinic on the other side of the road, primarily because the British Hujjaj want to see British doctors who understand the healthcare system that the Hujjaj have come from. And we can speak English, but amongst our team, we have doctors who can speak Bengali, Malayalam, Urdu, Punjabi. So we are multilingual as a medical team. And as I say, we're aware of the healthcare system that we've come from, which is the ones that the Hujjaj are aware of, and we can guide you as to what to do when you go back to the UK. Our clinics are free. If we have the medicines that you need, inshallah, we'll give you those for free as well. We don't charge for any medicines. We do take out various things like antibiotics, bandages, creams, painkillers, but we do not take out any regular medication that people are on. So if you have heart problems, diabetes, epilepsy, we will not be taking out any of those regular medications. The medication we take out is part of our own luggage allowance. We do not get any additional allowance, so we have to limit how much medication we can take. So please ensure that you take enough medication. One of the doctors a couple of days ago has produced a video clip on YouTube under a medical kit. You may want to have a look at this brief presentation. It will guide you on the kind of medication that you can buy at your local pharmacy over the counter, which you may find useful, including products for dehydration, diarrhea, indigestion, and so on. So have a look. Dr. Shamsul Zaman, one of the doctors from the British Hajj Delegation, has produced a quite useful short video clip. It's on YouTube. If you go on and put British Hajj Delegation, you will see the clip there. So that's quite useful to be guided on what you can buy. The only day that we are shut is the day of Arafat, but other than that, we tend to be open throughout the days of MINA. And prior to MINA, we also have a clinic in MAKKAH, which is on the other side of Haram, near the JAMARAT side. If you go on our website, which is britishhajdelegation.org.uk, inshallah, we'll make sure that we've got the address for the hotel as well as our Saudi phone number on there when we arrive next Monday, inshallah. So if you can't get to us, you're welcome to ring our Saudi number and we will guide you and advise you over the phone on what to do should you develop any ailments. When you get to Jamarat, to avoid any injury, don't rush to the first part of the pillar, the wall. Most people from around the world will run to the first part and it gets very crowded. Remember, there's 25,000 people from the UK, but there's 3 million people from around the world who are performing Hajj. And all these 3 million people will be doing Jamarat on the same day. What I found useful is when you get to the Jamarat and you get to the first wall, move to the side and just have a look at the far end of the wall. Very often, the far end is quiet. When I say quiet, you could take a small child and get right to the perimeter, do your stoning and walk away without anybody even touching you or pushing you. It's that quiet because people tend to rush in and do it at the beginning. Take your time, don't rush, enjoy the experience, but be safe and avoid the crowded areas. Once you have finished your Hajj rituals and you are ready to have your head shaved, try and avoid the people who are doing it in the street. Be aware when you're walking down the streets, there may be razors on the floor. The Saudi authorities, alhamdulillah, have been really good over the past few years and have stopped many barbers in the streets who have kind of set up their own little business to make money after Hajj. and tried to encourage people to go to the Saudi Authority licensed barbers, which will be within secure environments. It's more hygienic. They use disposable equipment, and get your head shaved in a safe environment. I've seen people in the past who have had their head shaved and literally blood's been pouring down because it's been done in haste by somebody because they want to get through as many hujjaj as they can. So do it in a government approved barbers where it was safe and more hygienic. The Ministry of Hajj does put posters round Haram in your hotel. Spend a few minutes, have a quick look at the advice they're guiding. They're very useful. Very often they are pictorial and very easy to understand. Take some little alcohol-free hygiene bottles. There is another YouTube clip that I've done called My Toiletry Bag, which shows the kind of products that I'm taking this year on Hajj, from toothbrush, toothpaste to various other products like Vaseline, talc powder, but also alcohol-free cleansers, especially in my job where I'm seeing hujjaj one after the other. I need to ensure that my hands are clean and I'm not transmitting infection from one hujjaj to another, but also people around Haram who are doing Hajj will be from around the world. Some of them will have coughs and colds, and therefore if you develop a cough and cold, make sure that having used disposable handkerchiefs, tissues, don't throw them on the floor, don't spit on the floor, which I see often from people, which is very unhygienic, and this is a holy place that we're in. There are bins around, so if you need to spit and get the phlegm off your chest, spit into a bin, but also dispose of the tissues in the bin. Don't throw them on the streets, and then use your alcohol-free, scent-free gels, especially if you're in a state of ihram. Out of the state of ihram, the scent issue doesn't matter. Some of the common ailments that we tend to see are blisters, ankle swelling, haji cough, insect bites, and the other things I've mentioned here. I would say dehydration will probably be this year #1 for people because the temperatures are predicted to get up to 55 degrees Celsius. I can't encourage you enough to prepare for this year. Again, to try and help the hujjaj, there is a YouTube clip produced by British Hajj Delegation where myself and one of my colleagues, Dr. Vijaya, who will be on the team this year, have jointly produced a short YouTube video clip under British Hajj Delegation on how to prevent dehydration and how to ensure that you sustain good health. Have a quick look. It's only a brief clip, but it guides you on issues around children and the elderly as well as yourself. Blisters happen very often. Look at the YouTube clip on good foot hygiene, around slippers. What kind of socks do you wear? How do you minimize blisters? This is a common occurrence. I've seen consultants, medical consultants, come to us during the days of Hajj who have developed blisters, causing it difficult for them to wear. It's not about how educated you are, it is about how well prepared you are. So have a look at the video clip on good foot hygiene on YouTube, and inshallah you will not develop any blisters. Very often most people will develop a type of cough, and this cough is one that you will bring back to the UK. You don't need antibiotics. Only people that really need to take precaution are people who may have asthma or bronchitis, but for most people you'll get a cough that will last for about 6 to 8 weeks. You'll come back to the UK. Most people tend to go and see the GP, for which the GP can't do anything because antibiotics are not warranted, and gradually the cough will fade away as your body's immune system fights the virus off. So don't worry too much about the Haji cough, but if you have got any underlying chest problems, then just be more cautious and get medical guidance if you need it. In terms of long-term conditions, this is some of the conditions. If you already have these, then do go and see your practice nurse or your GP and make sure you're familiar with what to do should you develop one of the, if your underlying condition exacerbates. in the heat of Mina, in the heat of Haram? What do you do if you have an exacerbation of asthma? What do you do with all the hard work that you're going to be doing, the walking, the fatigue? What do you do if your sugar levels are dropping? If you're pregnant, what precautions should you take? You know, how do you ensure that you don't put your body under too much physical stress? You know, if you have an epileptic seizure, these are the kind of things that you should speak to your GP about, and make sure your GP is aware that certain parts of the rituals of Hajj will mean that you will be walking for 2 to 3 miles, if not more, in the midday heat, which could get up to 55 degrees. One of the precautions that I would advocate that you ensure is that, especially when you're walking to JAMARAT and from MINA to MAKKAH, for those people that are going to do it by foot, is make sure you have a decent umbrella to keep you in the shade, and make sure you carry a bottle of water. Again and again and again, I'm reiterating the same thing: carry water, keep yourself well hydrated. Don't take a big golfer's umbrella that covers 4 or 5 hujaj, because you'll end up bumping into other hujaj. Take an umbrella which is for one person, ideally one of those small compact ones. But if you can't buy one here, or you decide that you don't want to carry one at the moment, then in the streets of Mina, very often people are selling white umbrellas, which are very good and they do the job. So keep yourself in the shade, minimize any complications of the long-term conditions, and go and see a nurse or GP and talk through what you should do if you have a exacerbation. Pharmacies are very well prepared. You can buy a lot of products in Saudi Arabia. Be guided that the person you're consulting is a pharmacist. You do not end up getting an examination while you're in the pharmacy, but these people have been there for many, many, many years and will be guided by the history you provide. If you are unsure about what to purchase, then give us a ring on our Saudi number, which will be on our website, britishhajdelegation.org.uk, or come and see us in clinic, and inshallah we'll guide you on what you can go and buy. You'll very often hear the pharmacists say things like, we do have that product available, would you like the one from this country or the one from this country, because the price is different. And the reason the price is different is the potency, the efficacy of the drug is different from different countries. So it's unlike the NHS, where no matter which pharmacy you go to, the product that they give you should be just as efficacious. In pharmacies in Saudi Arabia, they may give you an option. This is why I say that if you are going to take any medication for pre-existing conditions, and possibly even medication in your first aid kit, then take it from this country where you know the quality of the product is, I would say, more superior. But I might be doing Saudi pharmacies an injustice there. There is a free publication available, which I have written on top tips. It's brief. Each top tip is only 2 or 3 sentences, and it guides you from what to do from going out from before Hajj, preparing in the UK, to what to do during the days of Hajj and when you come back. I've written it in a format where you can put your own health issues in there, and inshallah, should you go for Umrah or Hajj in the future, you can then take the book with you with your own tips from this year to build on it and personalize it for you. I'll ensure that that BIMA has the link to the actual document and is shared with the audience. So inshallah, you can all go on and download it yourself, and hopefully inshallah you'll find it useful. Follow us on British Hajj Delegation. I've got a little push and a request from all of you listening. Alhamdulillah, this year, the work that the British Hajj Delegation has done before we go out, thanks to the medical team and our volunteers, has pushed our numbers from single numbers of followers up to above 900. And we're really grateful for the people who have been following us and giving us advice and guidance on what they would like to see more of. I have promised the doctors that before we leave next Saturday, that we will push the numbers to 1,000 followers. So please sign up and register with British Hajj Delegation on Facebook. We will keep you informed of things that's happening around Hajj while we're out there. And we will also share with you some of the things that we are seeing, treating, managing, and see if we can get you the latest information out there, both health and non-health. So register with us on Facebook, and inshallah, we will stay in touch with you. As mentioned, there is already presentations we've done on YouTube. This presentation I've just done is also on YouTube. For people who have not joined us today, they can go on and look at this presentation, and I talk through the presentation just as I've done here. But also, this is the one on dehydration with me and Dr. Vijaya that's on YouTube. The one on foot hygiene, the one I've done on my toiletry bag and all the products I'll be taking out with me. And there is also one that is done by Dr. Noreen Khan, who will be joining us this year as part of the medical team. She is a community gynecologist and an asset to the sisters going out to Hajj. Because she's a gynecologist, she's done a video YouTube on my sister's periods, and she goes through all the various options for sisters on how you can defer your menses, your periods, so that they don't get in the way of the days of Hajj when you may not want to have a period. Also, with her being on the medical team this year, it's an opportunity for sisters to come and see a female doctor who is a gynecologist, who will be able to guide them on their female health matters and be examined as and when necessary by a female doctor, rather than have to consult one of the male doctors. So there is one there, and as I've mentioned, Dr. Zaman has done a very useful one on medicines that you could purchase from your local pharmacist to take out in your kit. And that is my presentation done. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the audience may have. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair for that insightful talk. So I'd like to open up the floor for any questions now. You have the option to raise your hand, and you can ask a question straight to Dr. Jiva, or you can put it in the question box. So any questions you have, you have the opportunity to do that now.
I think I've answered all the questions.
Yeah, we have a question that we've got a hand raised, Hafiz Suleiman. If I just unmute you, you can ask your question. You're self-muted. If you just unmute yourself. Brother Hafiz Suleiman, if you just unmute yourself, or you can put the question in the question box.
I've got a question here. I'm not sure if that's the same question, but there is a question that says, what's your advice for people who have small children with them?
Yeah, that question's it's from somebody else, but if we just answer that question. Brother Hafiz has put his question down further in the list as well, so we've got that question as well.
The advice I would give to people with small children is as follows. I accept the fact that we are in school holiday period, and it's an opportunity for people to go and commit, for them to do their first Hajj, but also to take the children with them. Now, it's going to be very busy, very hot, and there are distances where children will get flustered and tired. You have to make sure that more than for the adults, you look for safe places to fulfill your Hajj rituals. So, for example, as I've mentioned before, when you're doing your tawaf, try and take them onto the first or second floor where there's more space. When you're going to JAMARAT, as I've mentioned, go to the far end of the wall. But the thing I would say is take some things like Cryolite as rehydration products, and through the day, stay in touch with the children and how they're feeling to make sure they're not getting dehydrated. Make sure they're not outside in the midday sun playing in the streets, especially in MINA. Keep them well covered, especially when they're not in ihram, and just make sure that they are regularly given drinks and their urine is not strong and smelly. So take a lot of precaution with children. I accepted that most people would take them out there, but make sure you look after them more than you look after yourself, because they're more vulnerable than we are as adults. So that's the question on children. We've got, what's the next question?
Can you see the one on hand sanitizers? The one underneath?
Let's have a look.
Does that come through to you?
I've not come through to that one yet. Do you want to ask me the questions and I'll answer them as I...
So you can answer the questions as you think they might be relevant to your talk, and if they're not, then we can postpone them to another talk. So one is, are we allowed to use alcohol sanitizers, or must it be alcohol free? And the same person's asked, can you wear face masks in ihram?
Right. This is difficult because different schools of thought have different views, and I'm providing a view from a medic's perspective, not from a scholar's perspective. I'll give you my personal view. I've got alcohol-free gel, and I would use alcohol-free gel during the days of Hajj. There is a view that I've heard that the alcohol that is within certain products is not alcohol that you drink, but it is alcohol that is for cleansing and other things. So it's not consumable alcohol, and therefore there is a school of thought that says that those products are usable. My view is that if there is alcohol-free version, then why just not use the alcohol-free version? Just make sure that if you're going to use any gels, that during the days of Hajj, when you are in a state of ihram, that these are not scented products. If there's any question about the feasibility of using a gel, then speak to the scholar in your group and ask for his guidance to make sure that you don't fall foul of any of your obligations for Hajj. In terms of face masks, now that's one that I do know the Saudi authorities this year are advocating face masks to try and prevent any cross-infection of viruses from one Hujjaj to another. I do know that very often I've heard from scholars, and being of a Hanifi madhab, very often the scholars that I've spoken to are of a Hanifi group. The view is that you can't wear face masks while you're in a state of ihram. You will see people around haram with face masks on. It's not my place to say whether it's right or wrong. It is for their scholars to guide them whether it's permitted or not. But I would say that from a health perspective, the face masks that people use tend to get very moist and wet from your own breath that is hitting the paper face mask. And once they get wet, they act as a warm medium for other infections to hold on to. So if you generally asked somebody from public health in this country about whether paper face masks are a healthy option, I suspect the answer is going to be no. And even the more expensive versions that have ventilators built in are probably not going to be as effective as you think. But my advice would be, rather than wear face masks, take a more common sense approach. Try and avoid crowded areas where you can. If you know that somebody's got an infection and a cough, try and keep your distances where you can. And if you yourself have developed a cough, then try and avoid heavily crowded areas where you may cross-contaminate other people. There is a question here about how common are muscular problems due to walking, and the answer is very common, because very often what we tend to find is people go from a sedentary lifestyle in this country, they've gone in cars everywhere, they sit around at home very often, and the next thing is the mind is telling them that during Hajj you have to get from A to B, and the distance from A to B could be 3, 4, 5 miles, and because all the other Hujjaj are walking, they are going with the flow and carrying on, and 24 hours later, when their muscles are inflamed, they realize that they've got leg pains and lower back pain and shoulder pains. If this happens, I've said previously that where you can, and you've still got a bit of time left, try and exercise in this country. In other words, go into the streets while the weather is good and start walking and see if you can walk 2 to 3 miles a day. But if you have no contraindications, which Dr. Zaman in his first medical aid kit presentation goes through, try and use things like anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, which are good as an anti-inflammatory to give you pain relief and calm the muscles down. And also with long distances, one of the common risks is blisters. So again, take precautions to avoid blisters. In terms of other questions that I can see, have you got any other questions that you can pass to me?
Yeah, so somebody's asking about advice on fasting on the Hajj whilst pregnant. Any advice for that?
Fasting.
Yeah.
Again, one for the scholars, from a medical perspective, there is no farz obligation that I'm aware of that you have to fast during the days of Hajj. Although there is merit and it's permitted for people to fast during their journey, when they get to Makkah, especially if you're pregnant. One, you've got to look after your own health. Two, you've got the health of the fetus, the pregnancy itself. It's going to be very hot. The chances are you're going to get dehydrated. And the reason you've gone out there is to perform Hajj. So if you burden your body, if you take on the challenges of fasting, and our fasting means nothing to eat or drink between sunrise and sunset, I think from a health perspective, the burden on your body is going to be too much. And not only will you compromise your pregnancy, you may even compromise your Hajj. So my advice would be, try not to undertake nafil fasting. Look after your health, retain your strength, stay well hydrated, look after your pregnancy, and make sure that you are in first class top tip condition for the days of Hajj, because the days of Hajj will take a lot mentally and physically out of you.
Thank you. Another question that's come through. I was told by my tour operator that the men ACWY vaccination is not needed and will not be checked. I have heard that you need to have it. Please could you clarify more about this situation, please?
Meningitis ACWY is mandatory and you have to have it. And as I've mentioned, that if you don't have it with the certificate, you may end up being challenged at the airport in Saudi Arabia. So the only vaccine that is mandatory is meningitis ACWY. And if your tour operator has suggested that you don't need it, then I would suggest that you liaise with the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office, if not the Saudi Embassy, and check with them, because I'm pretty sure they will suggest that you should have it.
And then one of the sisters has asked, how do you know the barber is government approved?
Usually the barbers are going to be in large kind of buildings, like with a tin roof with signs outside. So instead of, you'll see the distinction between the person who's in the street with loads of hair around him on the floor with blades around, where Hujjaj have just had their head shaved on the cheap, because it is slightly cheaper compared to people who go into a building and there's proper chairs, barbers' chairs, and you can see where they are properly disposing of their sharps. Relatively speaking, especially the men who are performing Hajj in this country, you go to a barber's, you'll pay a minimum of £5, £6, £7, anything up to £20 to have your hair cut. There, we're talking about £4 or £5 for your head to be shaved after Hajj. So, relatively speaking, it's very cheap, but don't be tempted by the fact that somebody outside will do it for £2 instead of £5, because the complications that you may develop may not be worth the extra £3 of expense.
That's lovely. And then another question come through. Again, the same person asking about pregnancy. What general advice would you give to a woman before going to Hajj while pregnant? I think you kind of covered it, really.
Well, in terms of pregnancy, it depends on where in your pregnancy you are. If you're in the first or second trimester, you should be fine, and there should be no complications, no restrictions on flying, and also on doing your rituals. Clearly, pregnancy is carrying or rest regularly, drink regularly. If you're in the third trimester, just make sure that when you're traveling back, your airline has no restrictions on the stage of your pregnancy hindering you coming back, because the airlines do have rules around how far in the pregnancy you can be before they will say no, that there are too many risks for you to fly and for the airline beyond a certain point. So check with your tour operator to check with the airline what stage of pregnancy you're in, and whether that can be a potential risk. But other than that, rest, eat regularly, take regular naps, drink regularly, and if you have any problems with the pregnancy and the vaginal bleeding, or you're not getting the teaching anymore, then give us a ring or come and see us and we'll guide you on what to do.
Is it buying travel insurance from the...
I can't hear that question. Can you just say that question again?
So the next question is it worth buying travel insurance from the UK before traveling to Saudi Arabia?
Right, that's the same question. That is a grey area. I do know that the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office advises that you do buy travel insurance before you travel. I do know that certain tour operators advise that you buy travel insurance before you go out. And I do know that certain tour operators, based on their scholars' views, advise that you shouldn't buy travel insurance. Healthcare in hospitals in Saudi Arabia during the period of Hajj is free. So inshallah, you should have no requirement to pay for healthcare in hospitals. Be guided, be advised that some tour operators, when Hujjaj fall ill, will take them to a private clinic, private medical clinic, where they will end up paying for consultations and any medication that is prescribed. Those are not cheap. They are private clinics, and you will be expected to pay for those. And I'm not sure whether your travel insurance would cover you for that, should you need to consult a private clinic. The hospitals are free. The pharmacists can quite easily sell you products, medicines that you may need. But I think in terms of whether you need travel insurance or not, my advice would be to sit on the fence, have a word with your group's scholar, and see whether your school of thought advocates having travel insurance or not. The one thing I will advise you is that should you need healthcare insurance, or you need to pay to be transported from Saudi Arabia back to the UK, for a health problem which the Saudi authorities feel they can no longer manage or is beyond the need for them to manage, but the travel may make you vulnerable, that you need like an ambulance transfer, an airline ambulance transfer, then the obligation for the cost for that will be down to you individually, not down to the British government to provide you that transport back. So that's the only caveat I would put in there, that make sure that if there is any healthcare problems, you will be responsible for the transport back to the UK from Saudi Arabia. Otherwise, go and have a word with your own scholars and see what your school of thought is, whether it's permitted or not. And that's me sat on a fence.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. It is 11:56 now. We've got a couple of questions on food. If you want to quickly answer
Come on, I'll quickly answer
that.
those for you before you finish.
So are there certain foods we should avoid even from hotels? For example, salads. How much food would you recommend we take with us, and what types of food?
Don't take any food with you. The food is ample. Bin Daud is one of the biggest stores there, which is like a mini version of our Asda or Tesco. You'll get a lot of food, from cereals to fresh produce to dairy products and various other things. So it's like a little Asda, mini Asda. So you'll get plenty of stuff. Zam Zam Towers has got various things, from Pizza Hut to all the other KFC and Burger King and so on and so on. In the hotels, depending on what type of group you're going with, whether you get, Indian Gujarati food or Bangladeshi food, or try and the food will be prepared well. The salad should be washed and cleaned and hygienic to eat, but try and avoid eating large, heavy meals that make you stodged. Try and have small amounts, and probably most of you know the hadith about, leave 1/3 of your stomach for solids, 1/3 for liquids, and 1/3 for air. So food is freely available. Avoid the food in the streets of Mina, because in the streets of Mina you will find people selling food, people with large dawas with fried food on there. Try and stick to the food that's provided by your tour operator in your tents.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for that very beneficial talk, and taking your time out on Sunday morning to come and speak for us. And I'd like to thank all the listeners for coming and listening. What I'll do now is just give you a small brief within the last 2 minutes introduction as to what BIMA is and what we do, and then we'll close the webinar there. Jazakallah khair again for all your time, Dr. Jiva.
Jazakallah.
So just a little quick whistle-stop tour on what BIMA is. We are a volunteer-based organization that was an amalgamation of lots of mini Muslim doctor or volunteer organizations up and down the UK, and it's now a national organization where there's the main aim of the organization is to inspire, unite, and serve. So to inspire each other, to inspire the community, to unite as Muslim healthcare professionals, and to serve our communities. So it is split into lots of different branches and lots of different teams. This webinar today by Dr. Jiva was done as part of the professional development webinars team, where we give information, do regular webinars on topics that are important to us and to our wider community. So we usually have a Ramadan initiative. There's trainees and students branch where there's like the introduction to FY1 for medical students that are becoming FY1s, induction days for them, and there's lots of different branches. And there's been a lot of work on history and medical ethics as well, a lot of work around organ donation and the different viewpoints. Our next big project is the Lifesavers project, which turns masjids once a year into life-saving centers, and the aim is to have every single mosque in the UK participating. That is the dream of the program. But at the moment, is so Muslim doctors and healthcare professionals become leads at their local mosques and teach BLS to the local public. So that is something you could volunteer for right now if anybody's interested. And there's always lots going on. There's regional WhatsApp groups and regional teams for you to keep in touch with what's going on in your regions as well, because there'll be specific things for the specific different regions that are going on as well. So there's actually a lot going on. If you go to the website, you'll find out more. And any questions, feel free to email it into info@britishima.org. So just coming back to our webinar today, if you fill out the feedback forms, you will be given certificates of attendance, and at the bottom you can put feedback for any further webinars you'd like. So that is everything for today. So Jazakallah khair for your time. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamul mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.